Skillshare is for designers, photographers, marketers, artists, and lifelong learners. Skillshare is for foodies, commuters, risk takers, the young, and the young at heart. It's for strategists, free spirits, purists, the bold, the curious, the characters, the makers, and the breakers. Skillshare is for everyone, an online learning community with thousands of classes to advance your career, improve the world, and pursue the work you love. What will you learn next? It all starts on Skillshare.
As I said in the introduction, the preposition is one of the joining words. It connects a noun with other parts of the sentence. And so you notice very cleverly I highlighted in red all the prepositions on this page. So with other parts of the sentence and the sample sentence down below. A postcard arrived for them from Bobby telling about his trip to Canada. So that's what a preposition does, very simply. And on the next slide, I'll introduce you to a mnemonic device that will help you remember the preposition. So this is it right here, the preposition box. This is the mnemonic device that should help you remember what a preposition is. So it's a little word that helps you orient yourself to, or in relationship to, the box. So you're in the box, you're on the box, you're under the box, you're to the side of the box, you're going through the box. All these words are prepositions. And if you just remember what the preposition box does, it helps keep your prepositions nice and safe and snugly and for your use. So you can pull them out anytime that you need them in your speaking or writing. To look more closely, or another way to look at it, prepositions connect words, as I said. They connect nouns. So we have the preposition of, in the example over here, one of your problems. So that's a noun. Problem is a noun, right? They connect pronouns. Far from her. I had to stay away far from her. Okay, so hopefully there's no restraining order. It's just because I was on a trip, and so I had to stay away from her, but then I was able to return home. Okay, so anyway, and her is a pronoun. Okay, so and they connect noun clauses. So we have the again the preposition from where you are standing. You see, so where you are standing is a noun clause, and it's the object of the preposition from, or alternatively, upon entering the room. Upon would be a preposition, and entering the room would be the noun clause that it connects. So prepositions connect nouns, pronouns, and noun clauses. Okay, and they do a couple other things, and we'll get to that in the later part of this lecture. I've mentioned that prepositions can also have figurative meanings. So our mnemonic device is, of course, the preposition box, and so we're in the box, we're on the box, we're going through the box, and those are very literal meanings. Those are tangible, concrete meanings. But prepositions can also have figurative meanings. That means we're not to take them literally. So if I asked you to write an essay on your mother, I would hope that you didn't write it on her, that is, on her back. You didn't take a pen and scribble it on her skin. So that's not what I meant. I meant about your mother, and about would be another preposition, but in this case we mean it figuratively. And so if you say that you know someone in love, perhaps you're not talking about the city of love, and it looks like the city of love would be somewhere in Saskatchewan, someplace in Canada, but that's not what you might mean. You might mean that you know somebody who is experiencing the emotion of love. So, and again, but in this case, in love, would be a figurative meaning of the preposition and not the literal, tangible meaning. An important concept for us to grasp is that of the prepositional phrase. For the most part, prepositions don't stand by themselves. They tie together, they combine words in a phrase, and that's known as a prepositional phrase. It's a phrase that begins with a preposition okay, one of the preposition box words, and usually ends with a noun or a pronoun. So let's take a look at some of the examples that we have over here. Okay, so you let the cat out of the bag. Okay, of the bag would be the prepositional phrase. So it begins with the preposition of and ends with the noun bag. And that bag is the object of the preposition. Let's go there. For dinner. Okay, for dinner would be the prepositional phrase. He's in the vicinity of the main office. Okay, of the main office. So here we have the object of the preposition office modified by the adjective main. You see, so you can have other words inside the prepositional phrase. It doesn't just have to be the object of the preposition or the noun. The dog chewed on the stick. On the stick is the prepositional phrase. You know, on being the preposition, stick being the object of the preposition, the noun object of the preposition. And by the way, that's a favorite activity of my dog. We go out for walks in the woods, and she just loves to pick up sticks and chew on them. Her favorite hobby. Anyway, back to the issue at hand. The lion was sleeping beneath the tree. So again, so you see the preposition underlined, you know, the whole word underlined and in red. Beneath, that's the preposition, okay, and tree would be the object of the preposition. My dog wandered far from home. So from, again, the preposition, home being the object of the preposition. And a long example, we went through the woods to grandmother's house by the river in the next county. So we have a series of prepositional phrases. You see, a sentence can have more than one prepositional phrase. And then I've also, down below, I've indicated the different prepositional phrases. Through the woods. Okay, through would be a preposition, woods would be the object of the preposition. To grandmother's house. Again, we have the preposition to. Grandmother's would be acting as a modifier for house. What kind of house? What's grandmother's house? And house being the object of the preposition. By the river, by being the preposition, river being the object of the preposition, and in the next county, in being the preposition and county being the object of the preposition. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you start to understand the whole idea of the prepositional phrase, because remember, for the most part, prepositions do not exist by themselves. Prepositions can also have a pronoun object. That is, a prepositional phrase can be comprised of a preposition plus a pronoun. It doesn't have to always be a noun, because remember, the pronoun does what? It takes the place of the noun. So again, we have some examples. The committee gave the award to him. So to him, to being the preposition, him being the pronoun. He baked the birthday cake for her. What a swell guy. Okay, so the senator spoke out against them. Okay, whatever them is. Okay, but he was against him. Okay, so anyway, so against would be the preposition. Remember, you can say against the box. Okay, it locates us in relationship to the box. But in this case, the against would have a figurative meaning. He's not literally leaning against them as he speaks. Well, you know, maybe another politician might. You know, if you're familiar with the mayor of Toronto, okay, Rob Ford, very likely he might have to be leaning up against the wall as he spoke, because otherwise he would fall down. Anyway. The rain fell on us. So again, this is a very literal meaning of the word on. It was on, you know, fell on us. On would be the preposition. Us would be the pronoun, object of the preposition. Let her sit between you and me. So here we have two objects of the preposition, you and me. Okay, and she's going to sit between us, and so the between would be the preposition. She gave the flowers to me. Okay, so to the preposition, me being the pronoun object. I hope you start to see the pattern here. You start to get the idea. He told a story about her. Mrs. Perez walked across it. It being the object of the preposition across. I did this for them, not for us. And here we have two different uses of the word for. Well, it means the same thing, but we repeat it, perhaps for emphasis, and for them being the object of the first for, us being the object of the second for. So anyway, I hope you see here that that the prepositional phrase does not have to contain a noun. It can contain a pronoun as the object of the preposition. One thing to remember is that preposition use is idiomatic. That is, sometimes the preposition used in a particular form, and I'll get to some examples, varies according to idiom, that is just the practice. It doesn't always make sense. Now, sometimes this varies from language to language. I mean, you might use one preposition in one language and another preposition that means something else in another language. I suppose this could be even more frequent in figurative uses, but sometimes even in quite literal ones. And so we see some examples here. So when you go sailing, you sail on the lake, but in the sea. Isn't that curious? I mean, you're still doing exactly the same thing. You're on top of the body of water. You're on the water, and you're sailing in a boat, but we say on the lake or in the sea. You would hike in the mountains or on the beach. That's odd, isn't it, once you think about it? Why are you in the mountains, but you're on the beach? I mean, you're literally on the mountain. You aren't inside it, but that's what we say. Somebody is involved with a person. Perhaps they're having a romantic relationship, but you're involved in a task. You're not involved with a task. Well, you could be, but more often in a task. You part from a spouse, if you want to, or you part from a friend. That is, you part from a person, but you part with a possession. Okay, here, take this. I want you to have this, so I'm parting with the possession. Okay, though you wouldn't do that with a person, I don't think so. Okay, you're impatient with a person. Don't be so impatient with me. I'm doing the best I can with me, with a person. But you're impatient for something to happen. I'm impatient for Christmas to come is something I used to feel, certainly, when I was young. Just couldn't wait for Christmas to come. Okay, so I was impatient for it. I'm afraid of the monster. Okay, but I'm afraid for my family. Okay, that's why I have life insurance. I'm afraid for them. What might happen if something were to happen to me? But I'm afraid of the monster. I'm not afraid for the monster. The monster can take care of himself. Okay, I agree to a proposal. Okay, I agree to your proposal. I think it's a good idea, but I agree with a person. I agree with you to your proposal. Okay, I compare to if I want to look at similarities. Okay. Let's compare one movie to another. But if I want to look at differences, I compare with that. And also sometimes we don't even use the word compare. We use the word something like contrast. But I live at an address, but on a street. Now that's curious. Again, the same thing. That's similar to the whole sailing idea, isn't it? On the lake or in the sea. Well, I live at an address or on a street. I don't live on an address, okay, and I don't live at a street, okay. So it's idiomatic. It's governed by idiosyncratic rules, by special rules that you just have to remember sometimes. And I lie in a bed, but on the couch. And again, same action, and same action or lack of action, just lying flat. On a flat surface, on a flat, soft surface, but it's in bed or on a couch. So sometimes you have to remember these things, and I'm going to post a more complete list in the text, and you can look at it and have fun. You can amuse your friends, play parlor games, or at least that's what we used to call them, party games. Okay, and try to learn the special uses of the prepositions. I'm going to speak briefly about some of the specific jobs that prepositions do. And this is above and beyond, their function as indicating where we are in relationship to the box, to the preposition box. So one thing that prepositions do is they give time location. So at a specific time, the plane arrives at 7 p.m. On, for days and times. The meeting is on Tuesday. We're having a party on New Year's Eve. Okay, so or in. So very often non-specific times. It's too hot in the summer. I started working here in 2010. So that's one of the things that prepositions do. They give time location, if you can think of time as being a location, but they indicate time. Something else that a preposition can do is give time duration. That is how long something is. So when I was a child, I could hold my breath underwater for 3 minutes. Okay, so for 3 minutes. They can measure the time since an event. And there I just used the word. I just used the preposition. Since an event. I've lived on the coast since 2010. Okay, so another one would be we got there before 3 o'clock. Okay, we got there before. So prepositions can also indicate time duration. Here we have a couple prepositions that are dedicated to movement. The preposition to and towards. We're going to New York, or we're sailing towards the shore. And the slight difference here is to is very often used if you're indicating that you're going to arrive at some place. You're emphasizing the arrival or the intended arrival. Towards emphasizes more the movement in the direction of, but not focusing so much on the arrival. We're heading towards the shore, but we're not going to the harbor. Okay, so you catch the difference, I hope. Anyway, so prepositions can also indicate movement. Sometimes prepositions can do double duty, as the note above says. That is, they can sometimes be prepositions and sometimes be something like a conjunction, or not something like a conjunction, an actual conjunction. So I have just a couple of examples over here. Since. I can use it as a preposition. I can't believe it's been more than 12 years since 9/11, that great tragedy, that atrocity that was committed upon America, but it's been more than 12 years since then. Or I can use it as a conjunction. That is, it introduces a subordinate clause. So it has been many a long and weary mile since I saw home. So I saw home has a subject and verb. So it's a clause, and it's a subordinate clause because it's introduced by the subordinating conjunction since. So here we have an example, or another example, and we're by no means limited to these two examples, and I'll provide a more complete list in the text, but just another example. Before, as a preposition, it's a couple hours before dinner. It's still a couple hours before dinner. Or as a subordinate conjunction, before we go back to the clubhouse, let's play one more round of golf. So before we go back to the clubhouse, we go. Okay, that's a subject and verb. That's a clause. Okay, and before would be the subordinating conjunction. Okay, so don't be confused, and this happens with other word forms as well, other words as well, that fall into more than one category. So you aren't always, or a word is not always locked into a particular category. Sometimes it can change hats, as it will, and serve in a couple different functions in different categories of parts of speech. A preposition can also combine with a verb. So we've been focusing mostly on how a preposition combines with a noun and forms a prepositional phrase, with a noun object. But sometimes a preposition combines with a verb and forms what you might call a phrasal verb. That is a verb that has a very particular meaning, as if it's one word, but it is printed and spelled out as if it's a phrase. So we have some examples. The phrasal verb cut out. Cut that out, which means to stop. You see, it's and it's not used in the same way as to cut the coupon out of the magazine. It's not that. It doesn't mean that. Write that down. Okay, that's another phrasal verb that'll blow up in your face. I mean, so the word, as it were, and word in quotation marks, the meme, the idea, blow up, is a distinct phrasal verb. We should go out for dinner. You see, so the go out is a phrasal verb. I'm not going to put up with that nonsense anymore. So to put up with something is, again, a phrase. It's a phrasal verb that means something quite distinct and exists as a word by itself. I'll look in on Granddad the next time I'm in town. So to look in on somebody is different from look. Okay, it's not quite the same thing. To look in on somebody. Your order adds up to $19.38. Okay, it adds up. Okay, so I went out for lunch and I bought a steak, perhaps, for $19.38. Quite extravagant, I think, but it's once in a long time treat. Anyway, you've given me something to think about. To think about something could be a phrasal verb. So anyway, so these are some examples of these phrasal verbs, and again, I'll include a more complete list in the text. But keep in mind that these exist in a sense as words by themselves, because the verb does not mean the same thing by itself as it means when it's in the phrasal verb, that is, in the verb plus preposition form. To continue the thought from the previous slide about the phrasal verb, the new word, as it were, that's formed with a verb being combined with a preposition, just take a look at this one example about how the word work changes meaning depending on the phrasal verb construction. So you work for somebody, okay? You work in something. You work at something. You work upon something. You work off. You work out. You work over, okay? So to work for somebody, that's, you're performing labor for somebody. To work in something, you work in the construction industry. To work at something, you're endeavoring to complete a task. To work upon something, very similar to working at. You work off, I've got to work off those extra pounds I put on over Christmas. I've got to eliminate, I've got to reduce my weight, I've got to work the pounds off. To work out, that means to exercise, okay? It doesn't mean to work outside, okay? Or to work over. That's something the mafia collection guy does. He works you over if you haven't paid him back, okay? So anyway, these are some examples of how prepositions can change the meaning of a verb. Now the preposition part of this phrasal verb is sometimes called a particle. Think of it as the part of the verb, as a preposition part of the verb. And we can see, just spend one more moment with this, we can see how it's different from a separate preposition. So you see, I could say, I want to write down my thoughts before I forget them. Okay, write down my thoughts. And so that's one idea. I couldn't say, down my thoughts, I want to write before I forget them. You see, that's putting the preposition in the wrong place. But if this particle were acting as a regular preposition, it would head up a prepositional phrase, and you actually could say, down my thoughts. Okay, but you can't, because the phrase is the phrasal verb is to write down. Okay, so, and my thoughts is not the object of the preposition down, but rather it's the object of the verb. What are you writing? What are you writing down? I'm writing down my thoughts. Okay, so, and another example that we have over here is the nearest store is down the hill. Okay, so you see, so that down, as opposed to the down in to write down, that is a proper preposition that heads up the prepositional phrase down the hill. And you could say, albeit a little awkwardly, you could say, down the hill is the nearest store. Okay, so you see, so down the hill stays together as a whole phrase. Just like you can't say, down my thoughts I want to write, right? You can't say that, but you can say, down the hill is the nearest store. Down the hill is where I want to go. You see, so that down the hill works as a preposition. So this is the difference between the, what you might consider the true preposition and the preposition that tags along with the verb to form yet another meaning. Just a little historical note, a language historical note to end this lecture with. Okay. Sometimes you might hear, sometimes somebody might tell you that you cannot end a sentence with a preposition. This is wrong. Okay. The history of this rule, or the supposed rule, comes from the 1900s when learned people, people who studied grammar, were very deeply involved in the study of Latin, and Latin was considered the learned language. Everybody had to know Latin. In fact, coming out of the 1800s, even many scientific treatises in Europe were written in Latin. And so grammarians, that is, people who looked at language, thought that Latin provided the true form for grammar. Now, these were people who knew many different languages, much more than individuals today, even learned people, even educated people might learn today. It'd be very common for an educated person to grow up learning Greek and Latin, perhaps Hebrew, and then to tackle and master some contemporary European languages. An English-speaking person might take on French and German, for instance, and have 4 or 5 different languages. It's surprising, though, that they never figured out, some of these people never figured out that rules of grammar vary and differ between different languages, but they didn't. And so they tried to cram English into the Latin grammatical structure. Now, in Latin, you cannot end a sentence with a preposition. You just can't. It just doesn't work. But in English, this is not valid. You can. There are many cases in which you do end a sentence with a preposition. And so the quote that I have above, this is the sort of bloody nonsense, up with which I will not put, was written down, scribbled, in a manuscript that Winston Churchill wrote. Okay, so when some editor wrote back to him, you can't end a sentence with a preposition. Winston Churchill, the bulldog prime minister who led Britain and against Nazi Germany during the Second World War, he scribbled defiantly in the margins, "This is the sort of bloody nonsense up with which I will not put." So you notice the up with which, the distorting of English grammar to fit the rule sounds really funny. So you never want to write that. See, so the natural form would be, "This is the sort of bloody nonsense which I will not put up with." Okay, so and that's the final word to end this lecture with. See you next time.